I married a stranger to stay alive. That's what the lawyer told me as he slid the contract across the table with shaking hands. My father's debts had finally caught up with us. Men with guns had already come to our house once. The next time they wouldn't knock. This marriage will protect you, the lawyer whispered. He'll clear the debt. No one will touch your family again. I stared at the name on the paper. Luca Moretti. I had heard it before. Everyone had. The man who owned half the city and the other half Sphere. I don't know him, I said. You don't have to, the lawyer replied quietly. You just have to belong to him. 2 hours later, I stood in a private chapel wearing a borrowed dress, my hands trembling as a man I had never met placed a ring on my finger. Dark hair. Cold eyes. When the priest said we were married, Luca leaned down and whispered in my ear. His voice calm and soft. Welcome home, wife. My stomach dropped. I didn't agree to live with you, I whispered. He smiled faintly. You didn't read the contract carefully enough. His house was not a mansion. It was a fortress. High walls. Cameras everywhere. Guards who never spoke. He led me inside himself, never letting go of my wrist, like he was afraid I would vanish between the gate and the door. Your room is upstairs, he said calmly. My room, I whispered. What about yours? Our room, he corrected. Fear crawled up my spine. I won't touch you, he added quietly, watching my face. Unless you ask. That should have comforted me. Didn't. At dinner he barely spoke. He watched me eat, watched me drink, watched every breath I took. Finally I whispered, why did you agree to this? He set his glass down slowly. Because your father owes me more than money. Cold flooded me. What do you want from me? He studied me for a long moment. Nothing, he said. Then softly. Yet. That night when I tried to lock the bedroom door, I realized something worse. There was no lock. The first time I tried to leave, he didn't stop me. I walked down the long hallway, past guards, past marble statues, my heart racing. The front door opened easily. Freedom waited outside. I took one step, and froze. 2 men stood at the gate. The same men who had come to my father's house. Smiling. Behind me, Luca's voice said calmly, if you walk through that door, they'll take you. My breath shattered. You said you married me to protect me, I whispered. I did, he replied. Turn slowly. And now you're protected, he continued gently. Only when you're inside my walls. Tears burned my eyes. So I'm a prisoner. No, Luca said, stepping closer. You're my wife. His fingers brushed my chin, forcing me to look at him. And I protect what's mine. My heart slammed painfully in my chest. You'll get used to it, he murmured. Then quieter, darker. And if you don't? His eyes softened. I'll teach you. The rules came the next morning. Not written. Not spoken aloud like orders. He simply showed me. A maid appeared with breakfast and placed the tray on the table without looking at me once. Guards stood outside every door. My phone was gone. When I asked for it, Luca only said calmly, you don't need it anymore. My chest tightened. My family is safe, he interrupted. Your father's debt was paid last night. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly gave out. And if I leave? I whispered. His eyes darkened slightly. Then the debt returns. Silence fell between us. Later a woman brought me clothes. Not dresses. Not gowns. Soft sweaters. Silk pajamas. Shoes that fit perfectly. All chosen by Mr. Moretti, she said quietly. Every size. Every color. He had known my body before I arrived. That afternoon I wandered into the East Wing by accident. The moment I touched the handle, Luca's voice came from behind me. Not that door. Jump. What's in there? I whispered. He walked closer, stopping inches away. Everything I do so you can sleep at night. That evening at dinner, a man suddenly burst into the room shouting in Italian. Gunshots echoed outside. Guards dragged the man away. I screamed. Luca was instantly in front of me. his arms around me, shielding my body with his own. "Don't look," he murmured. Blood splattered the marble floor. When the noise stopped, he held my face gently. "You see," he whispered. "This is why you're here." That night, I shook so badly I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark walls, waiting for something terrible to happen. The door opened quietly. Luca entered. Not angry, not cold, concerned. "You're trembling," he said softly. "I watched someone die," I whispered. "Yes," he replied. "And you're still alive." He sat beside me, careful not to touch. "They came for you tonight," he continued calmly. My heart stopped. "For me." "For your last name," he corrected. "For your father." Tears spilled down my face. "If you hadn't married me, you would be dead," he said gently. Silence. Then quietly, "I don't enjoy frightening you." "Then why trap me?" cried. He looked at me for a long time. "Because," he said, "I've wanted you since the first time I saw you." My breath hitched. "At the cafe," he continued. "3 months ago. You dropped your book." Memory flashed. A man with dark eyes. Polite smile. "You followed me," I whispered. "I protected you," he said. He reached out, brushing my knuckles with his fingers. "You just didn't know yet." 2 days later, I learned what kind of wife I was expected to be. Not obedient. Invisible. At a formal dinner with his associates, I sat beside him in a black dress he had chosen himself. No one spoke to me. No one looked at me. Like I was decoration. Then one man laughed and said something crude about me in Italian. Before I understood the words, Luca's hand slammed onto the table. The room went silent. "Say her name with respect," he said quietly. The man paled. "She is my wife." His hand slid possessively onto my thigh under the table. And suddenly, everyone looked at me. Not as property. As something dangerous. Later in the hallway I whispered, "You didn't have to defend me." "Yes," Luca replied calmly. "I did." He stopped walking and turned to me. "You are the only thing in this house no one is allowed to touch." His thumb brushed my lower lip. "And if someone forgets that." His eyes darkened. "They don't stay in my world very long." My pulse raced. Fear twisted in my chest. And something else. Something warm. Something traitorous. For the first time since the wedding, I wondered what it would feel like. To belong to a monster who would burn the world for me. The jealousy started quietly. Not with anger. With control. The next morning, 2 guards began following me everywhere inside the house. When I asked why, Luca only said calmly, "Because you're learning too much about my world." At breakfast, one of the younger guards smiled at me. Just a polite smile. Nothing more. That afternoon the guard was gone. When I asked where he went, Luca answered without looking up from his phone. He asked to be transferred. Something in his tone made my stomach twist. Later at dinner, one of Luca's associates leaned too close to me while speaking. Luca didn't interrupt. Didn't move. Didn't raise his voice. He only waited. That night, I heard a scream echo through the east wing. One short sound. Then silence. The next morning, the associate was not at breakfast. No one asked where he was. When Luca finally came to my room that evening, I whispered, "Did you hurt him?" He studied my face carefully. "Does it matter?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said. He stepped closer. "I removed a problem," he replied. "Nothing more." Fear flickered inside me. And something worse. Relief. The kidnapping happened 3 days later. I was in the garden for the first time alone, breathing real air, pretending I was still part of the normal world. A shadow moved behind the trees. Then a hand covered my mouth. I barely had time to scream before everything went dark. When I woke, my wrists were tied. Dirty room. Concrete walls. Men arguing in another language. Panic exploded in my chest. They had taken me. From Luca. Hours passed. Then the door burst open. Gunfire. Shouting. And Luca. He walked through the smoke like death itself. Blood on his hands. Cold in his eyes. The men dropped their weapons. One tried to run. Luca shot him without slowing. He came straight to me and knelt, cutting the ropes with shaking hands. "Look at me," he whispered urgently. "Are you hurt?" I started sobbing. He pulled me into his chest, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I told you," he whispered into my hair, voice breaking for the first time. "No one touches what's mine." Behind us, someone screamed. Luca didn't even turn around. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, wrapped in his coat, still shaking. He stood at the window, giving orders into his phone, calm again, controlled again. When he finally hung up, he came to me slowly. "They won't try again," he said. "How can you be sure?" I whispered. "Because," he replied quietly, "there's no one left who would dare." Silence filled the room. "You killed them," I said. "Yes. For me." He hesitated, then nodded. "For you." My chest hurt. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he interrupted softly. He sat in front of me, taking my trembling hands. "When I thought they had hurt you." His jaw tightened. "I stopped being human." I whispered. "That scares me." He looked at me with something raw. "It should," he said. Then quieter. "But it should also tell you how much you matter to me." Tears slid down my face. Without thinking, I leaned forward and kissed him. Not gentle, not careful, desperate. He froze for half a second, and he kissed me back. Low, possessive. Like he had waited for this moment longer than I could imagine. When he pulled away, his voice was rough. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Yes." He touched his forehead to mine. "Tonight," he whispered, "you stay with me." And for the first time since I married him, I didn't feel like a prisoner. Felt frozen. That night he didn't rush me. He led me into his bedroom slowly, one hand at my back, guiding, not pushing, as if giving me one last chance to turn around. The room was dark, heavy curtains, a single lamp burning low. I stood in the center, shaking, still wrapped in his coat. "You don't have to do this," Luca said quietly. I swallowed. "I want to." His eyes darkened. Not hunger, relief. He took off his jacket and placed it carefully on the chair, like this moment mattered more than any battle he had ever fought. When he touched me, it was gentle, almost reverent, like I was something fragile he was afraid to break. "You're safe," he whispered against my skin again and again. And for the first time, I believed it. Later, when I lay in his arms, listening to his heartbeat, I realized something terrifying. I had stopped thinking about escape. In the morning, I woke alone. For one horrible second, I thought it had been a dream. Then I saw the guards outside the door. 2 instead of 1. Luca came back with coffee and sat on the edge of the bed. "You're not leaving this room today," he said calmly. Fear rushed back. "Why?" "Because someone put a price on you last night." My breath caught. "Who?" He hesitated. Then quietly, "My brother." The word hit harder than any gunshot. "You have a brother?" "Yes." "Why would he want me?" "He doesn't," Luca replied. "He wants me." Cold flooded my veins. "He thinks if he takes you, I'll come running." Tears filled my eyes. "This is my fault." "No," Luca said firmly. "This is my war." He touched my face. "And now you're the only weakness I have." That afternoon, I finally learned the truth about my father. Luca brought me into his office and opened a safe hidden behind a painting. Inside, photos, documents, contracts. My name was everywhere. My father hadn't borrowed money. He had sold something. Me. My hands began to shake as I read the paper. Guardianship transfer. Marriage clause. Debt cleared upon union. My voice broke. "He planned this." "Yes," Luca said quietly. "He came to me 6 months ago." "He sold me to you," I whispered. "He begged me to take you," Luca corrected. "Because the men chasing him would have killed you first." Tears streamed down my face. You knew, I whispered. From the beginning. Yes. And you still married me. He stepped closer. Because when I saw your photo, I refused to let them touch you. My chest hurt. So I'm not your wife. You are, he said softly. But you were never the debt. You were the reason I paid it. I cried harder. You trapped me. He cupped my face gently. I chose you, Luca whispered. And I would choose you again. Even if you hated me forever. That night the attack came. Gunfire exploded outside the gates. Alarms screamed through the house. Guards rushed through the halls. Luca pushed me into a hidden room behind the bedroom wall. Lock this, he ordered. Don't open it for anyone but me. My hands shook. You're going to die. He kissed me hard. Desperate. Not tonight, he said. Then he was gone. Minutes passed. Then hours. I sat in the dark, listening to shots, screams, explosions. Praying. Finally. A step. Knock. Once. Open it, Luca's voice said softly. I unlocked the door. He stood there covered in blood. Not all of it his. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing. It's over, he whispered. Is your brother dead? Yes. He hesitated, then said quietly. No. He ran. My heart sank. Luca lifted my chin. This war just became forever, he murmured. And so did you. They took me at dawn. Not screaming. Not fighting. I was still half asleep when the door burst open and hands dragged me from the bed. A cloth pressed over my mouth, the world spinning into darkness before I could even say his name. When I woke, I was in a moving car. Blindfolded. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. A man's voice laughed somewhere beside me. Relax, he said in Italian. You're very valuable. Hours later, they pulled me into a cold warehouse by the water. And there, I saw him. Luca's brother. Same dark hair. Same eyes. But emptier. Crueler. Hello, little sister-in-law, he said pleasantly. My name is Marco. Tears streamed down my face. Let me go. He smiled. Oh, I will. He leaned close. Right after your husband comes begging. They chained me to a chair and turned on a camera. Marco brushed my hair back gently. Smile, he whispered. He's going to love this. Luca came alone. Of course he did. The doors slammed open and he walked inside without a weapon, without guards, without fear. Just rage. Pure. Terrible. Marco clapped slowly. You really married her. I thought you were pretending. Luca didn't answer. His eyes were only on me. Blood ran down my wrists from the chains. You hurt her, Luca said softly. Marco laughed. Not yet. He gestured. A gun pressed against my temple. Now, Marco said calmly, you hand me your empire, or I paint the floor with your wife. Luca didn't hesitate. Done. Every man in the room froze. Marco blinked. What? It's yours, Luca repeated quietly. All of it. Every territory. Every account. Just let her go. My breath shattered. No, I sobbed. Don't. Luca looked at me. And in his eyes, there was no mafia, no king, no monster, only a man who loved me more than power. Marco stared at him in disbelief. You're giving up everything for a woman. Yes. Marco laughed. You're pathetic. He raised the gun. And that was when I screamed. Wait. They all turned. My voice shook. Marco, if you kill me, Luca will hunt you until the end of your life. Marco smirked. He'll have no army. I swallowed. He doesn't need one, I whispered. Because I'll go with you. Silence crashed through the room. Luca's face went white. What? He breathed. I'll be your hostage, I said to Marco, tears streaming. Your shield. Your queen. Just let him go. Marco studied me slowly, then smiled. Deal. They released Luca. I watched the man I loved back away, shaking, eyes never leaving mine. Don't, he whispered. I choose you alive, I said softly. Marco grabbed my arm. Then, Gunshots exploded. Kiss. Screams. Blood. Luca had lied. He had never come alone. In seconds the room became a battlefield. Marco dragged me toward the door. Luca tackled him. They fought like animals. I tore the blindfold from my eyes and saw Marco raise a knife. Without thinking, ran. I grabbed the fallen gun. And I shot him. The sound tore through the building. Marco collapsed at Luca's feet. Silence fell. Luca turned slowly toward me. Blood on his face. Shock in his eyes. You, he whispered. My hands shook around the gun. I didn't want to lose you, I cried. He crossed the room in 2 steps and crushed me against his chest, holding me so tight it hurt. You saved me, he whispered. No, I said through tears. I chose you. We disappeared after that. New city. New empire. Stronger. Deadlier. At Luca's side I learned everything. The business. Codes. Power. Men bowed when I entered rooms. Enemies whispered my name with fear. Luca. He never hid what I had become. One night, months later, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city, wearing black silk and diamonds bought with blood. I could have gone to the police, I said quietly. Yes, Luca replied. You could have left me. Yes. I turned to him. Do you regret it? He touched my throat gently, where Marco's gun had once rested. Every day, he said honestly. Then softer. And I would still choose you again. I smiled slowly, because I knew the truth now. I hadn't married a monster. I had become one, and I had never felt safer.